All right, thanks everybody. How's everybody doing today? All right, I always get embarrassed hearing my bio, which is strange because I'm the one that put it together, but I always get embarrassed hearing that. Okay, so I want to thank everybody for coming out today. Thank Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Lambda Pi Omega, and Omega Epsilon Omega chapters, Social Justice Initiative for asking me to speak again. We did a panel discussion last year, October 22nd, 2024. It was myself and my radio sister, Livonia Perryman, because Livonia was on 910 AM WFDF as well. And we dealt with Project 2025 and its potential impact on the African American community. And we were warning people about what was to come, and now we're in the storm, okay? So when Farrah Glenn reached out to me a few months ago to ask me to do this presentation, I told her that I had to incorporate some history into this presentation so everybody really understands what's taking place right now, okay? Because this is decades in the making, and the signs were there all along. And if you understand history, you could see these signs. And I made, I'm on Roland Martin Unfiltered every Friday. I've been on for 5 years. I've made, about 250 appearances on Roland's show. And we argue every week pretty much, but, we still bring the information. How many people see me on Roland Martin Unfiltered? Okay. All right. So I made the point one time last year that all of the lights on the dashboard of democracy are flashing red. And it's a warning sign, okay? All right, so this is what I want to do. This presentation, if we can go, Marcus, if we can go to my slides. That was a slideshow presentation. I was up to 2:30 this morning working on this. Then I got off work at 1 p.m., went back home and worked an hour and a half more on this. Okay, so this presentation is called Project 2025, the Impact on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, better known as DEI, all right? And you can visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. I got some information at the end for you as well. And at the African History Network, you focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, and this is my information as well, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com and the African History Network show. My website connects you to my social media platforms. Next slide, Marcus. Okay, so here's what I want to do in this presentation in this short amount of time that we have. One, I want to deal with Project 2025 and anti-black policies, okay? And the reason why I want to do this is because I've been talking about Project 2025 since 2023. Okay, it came out April 2023 from the Heritage Foundation. And one of the things I do in my research is I'm looking at trends that are coming. What's coming? What do we have to look out for? I've been in media 15 years, and at one point I was doing the African History Network show 6 days a week. So this is intensive research that I do. And I had so many, and I promise I'm not going to cuss, so don't worry. I know I've been around Roland a long time, but I'm not going to cuss. Don't worry, okay? All right. But I talked to so many Simple Simon black people last year who told me I didn't know what I was talking about. And I'm like, well, hold on. I got it from the Heritage Foundation's website. I can prove this to you, okay? We can look and see how far back this is going, okay? So one of the things I'm going to do is deal with Project 2025 and anti-black policies. 2, break down what is diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, okay? And why it's more than just a job, because so many of our people thought it was just about jobs, and they circulated this article from Black Enterprise saying only 4% of DEI jobs went to black people, therefore they thought it had no value. It's like, no, forces are using DEI to wipe out 60 years of civil rights progress that African Americans have made, okay? And if you read, you could see this taking place, because Anytime there have been periods of time of advancement that African Americans have made, there's always been a backlash to that to take us back. There's always been a white backlash to it, whether it happened at the end of Reconstruction in 1877, whether it happened in 1968 to derail the civil rights movement, okay? You can see this coming. So we have to understand, and at the end, when I talk about solutions, I'm going to talk about political self-defense, which is a concept that I've created. We have to be able to assess and understand how to protect gains that have been made. Because there are always threats trying to take you back, and there are forces right now trying to take us back to 1890 in Mississippi. How many people know what happened in 1890 in Mississippi at the Mississippi State Convention, where they rewrote the state constitution to impose poll taxes, literacy tests, and the felony disenfranchisement law to lock African Americans out of political power? Because 2,000 African American men got elected during the Reconstruction era, 1865 to 1877. So when that period collapses, then you have the Jim Crow era. And there's a backlash to take us back, okay, and wipe out the gains that we've made. This is what's taking place right now. All right. Okay, 3, how 60 years of civil rights progress has been erased in a matter of months. Nicole Hannah-Jones, who spearheaded the 1619 Project, she wrote an extensive essay for the New York Times in June 2025 that goes in depth and breaks this down, okay? And I did a segment on my show that deals with this. I talked about it a couple weeks ago on Roland Martin Unfiltered, so I'm going to share an excerpt of that with you to understand how wide-ranging this black erasure is taking place. And oftentimes, the mistake that many people make is that we think that gains that we made, laws that were passed, were permanent. Okay, and we don't have to fight to keep those policies in place. Okay, so now we're seeing what happens when not enough people fight back. Okay, number 4, changing the focus. What's taking place right now is we have a changing of the focus of civil rights laws to fight discrimination against white people. The laws that were passed historically, primarily for African Americans, are now being used in saying that white people are being discriminated against, whether it's the Civil Rights Act of 1866, which was passed the year after slavery ended, and this was passed by Congress, and this was a law that allowed African Americans, former slaves, to enter into contracts and labor contracts, things like this, okay? Whether it's the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment of 1868, which was primarily passed for African Americans, former slaves, it gives us citizenship. Now we see many of those same laws being used against us, but at the same time, we're being told that we want to fill Dr. King's dream, and we want a colorblind society. Why they wipe out Dr. King's dream? Why they wipe out 60 years of civil rights progress? Okay, and then we'll deal with the attack on voting rights. Right now, you got attack on Section 2 of the 1965 Civil Rights Act. The reason why you needed the 1965 Civil Rights Act is because what happened in Mississippi in 1890. What happened in South Carolina, what happened in Louisiana in 1898, because what Mississippi did was called the Mississippi Plan. It became a model for all the other southern states, former Confederate states, to rewrite their state constitutions, impose poll taxes, literacy tests. Louisiana imposed the grandfather clause. So if your grandfather couldn't vote prior to 1867, that meant that you couldn't vote. These were all methods to get around the 15th Amendment of 1870, which guaranteed the right to vote for African American men, okay? For women, it's going to come with the 19th Amendment in 1920, but in the South, many of us still couldn't vote because of the poll taxes and because of terrorism as well, okay? So we can draw a direct line from the end of Reconstruction 1877 to 1890, and the white county judge that presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890, his name was Solomon Saladin Calhoun. He said, we came here to exclude the Negro. They said specifically what they were trying to do, okay, and they succeeded. All right, and then we'll deal with erasing African American history, the effort that's taking place to erase African American history while resurrecting Confederate monuments. They both deal with history. You're attacking the African American Smithsonian Museum. You're attacking African American history. You're banning books, but you want to resurrect Confederate monuments. These are people who committed treason against the Union based upon Article 3, Section 3 of the U.S. Constitution, took up arms to protect slavery. And you're resurrecting their monuments. You're bringing back their paintings. You're renaming schools and things like this after, I thought these people were traitors. And then lastly, if we have time, if you want me to deal with this, all right, because I was on Carl Nelson's show, WOL, out of Baltimore, blew everybody away. I did a video back in April 2025 dealing with this topic. Can a president be elected or serve more than 2 terms? Got 130,000 views on my Facebook page, the African History Network, where I have 1 million followers. And all I can say is, it ain't as clear cut as people think it is, because I did the research. People talk about the 22nd Amendment that says no person can be elected to more than 2 terms, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, that's true, but you're not talking about Section 2 of the 25th Amendment, because most of the legal scholars on CNN and MSNBC are not talking about that. So I broke that down, and nobody has refuted what I said. So I'll give you the brief version, because I got 11 pages of notes on that last point. I did the research. Okay, now, so let's get into this. Let's go to the next slide, Marcus. Okay, so what is Project 2025? Okay, now Project 2025 is a 922-page playbook from a conservative organization called the Heritage Foundation. It consists of about 318 policy recommendations. Now, it is a backlash to the racial justice reckoning that took place in the U.S. after the death of George Floyd, May 25th, 2020, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So many of you remember this was during COVID. Many people were at home. We're watching the video on the news, on MSNBC, CNN, things like this. People are out in the street marching, protesting. Corporations come out and say, oh, this is horrible, what happened? We're going to throw tens of millions of dollars at this group, at that group, all of this, right? Okay, but now you got a lot of people act like that didn't happen. Now you have people, you have corporations that put policies in place that say we want, racial justice, we want equity and things like this. Now they're saying, well, that was nice, but the climate has changed, so we don't need that anymore. Okay, really? How did you do a survey to determine that those policies aren't needed anymore? All right, so Project 2025 attacks DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, attacks affirmative action, attacks African American history, and it's actually called Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise, Project 2025, Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. Now, it was released in April 2023. I found out about it in its full form in September, right about September 23rd, 2023, on Ali Velshi's show on MSNBC. He did an in-depth dive into the entire program. I saw bits and pieces of it before then, but when I saw his show, September 23rd, 2023, I said, this is not going to end up well. All right, now, I've been talking about it since then. Now, most African Americans did not find out about it until Taraji P. Henson warned us about it at the BET Awards, July 2024. It came out a year and 2 months before that. So one of the things that we have to do is we have to do a deep dive analysis. How is it that we're all walking around with smartphones, but many of us are uninformed? Many of us don't know. I know you had a lot of people last year saying, can you believe they wrote it down? The Heritage Foundation has been put in their policy playbook called Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise. They've been putting it in writing each election cycle going back to 1981. This is documented. 1981, it was a New York Times bestseller. No, dude, no. Y'all think I'm playing. In 1981, Mandate for Leadership, the Conservative Promise was a New York Times bestselling book. So we have to ask the question, well, hold on, while we're distracted with reality TV shows and housewife this and hip hop that and all this stuff, what's going on to determine our future and our conditions? Okay, now, according to the Project 2025 tracker, 48% of the 319 policies have been put in place since the beginning of this year, even though you had people who said, I don't know anything about Project 2025, okay? And I sat there listening to this stuff. I said, I can't believe people fall for this. All right, now, so one of the things that I talk about, we have to understand is history, economics, law, and politics. History, economics, law, and politics, all right? And it was 140 people from the administration just a few years ago to help write Project 2025. So when people say, oh, they don't know anything about it, I'm like, oh, okay, you just stuck on stupid. Some people you just can't help. All right, now, when we look at the anti-black policies coming from Project 2025 and the current administration, I know, so one of the things I talk about is how racism attacks all black people regardless of country or origin, language spoken, or religion. Because some of us think that our proximity to white supremacy is going to protect us from white supremacy, and it's not. Okay? It doesn't matter which country you come from, which language you speak, which religion, etc. We see all of us are being attacked. And at the same time, what happens is, and many of you saw this, you had people telling white people the reason why you don't have this, the reason why you aren't successful, the reason why you don't have a job is because of black people, DEI, and affirmative action. And they didn't earn it. We want a merit-based society. Then they tell black people the reason why you don't have this, the reason why you don't have a job is because of immigrants and undocumented immigrants. Then they tell everybody the reason why your child didn't win, the reason why your daughter didn't win the athletic competition is because of transgendered athletes. And transgender people make up 0.6% of the U.S. population. And then on day one, they come after everybody. All right, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so there's a good article. I went back in my archives and I was looking at some articles to put together this presentation. There's a really good article from USA Today. This is called "What is Project 2025? The Presidential Transition Project Explained." And this article is from June 21st, 2024. That's when it was updated originally, June 10th, 2024. Okay, and here's what it says: the detailed plan to dismantle and reconstruct the government laid out by conservative groups known as the 2025 Presidential Transition Project has critics up in arms over its apocalyptic and authoritarian nature. The Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank in Washington, D.C., led an effort to create the more than 900-page Mandate for Leadership published in April 2023. Reimagining the executive branch and presented a plan to overhaul several federal government agencies, including the FBI, for the country's next conservative president to follow. Okay? Next slide. All right, now, the mandate attacks several policies that former recent administrations have instituted, including student loan forgiveness and the Affordable Care Act, also called Obamacare, right? It simultaneously calls for expanded executive power for the commander-in-chief. That's the executive unitarian theory, and it's taking power away from the legislative branch of government, from Congress, okay? So we all learn in civics class and social studies class the three branches of government: executive, legislative, and judicial. Judicial is the courts. Legislative is the House of Representatives and the Senate. Executive is the president. And it's supposed to be a balance in the powers. That's the way the founding fathers, even though some of them were slave owners, you know, some things they did do right. That's the way the founding fathers laid out that balance of power. Okay? All right, next slide. All right, now, this was another good article here. This is from, this is What is Project 2025? What to know about the conservative blueprint for a second Trump administration. Now, this is from CBSnews.com. So I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. I know I consume more than the average person, all right? So I have thousands of articles in my office, printed articles in my office. This is one of them. This is from October 1st, 2024, all right? Here's an excerpt of what this article says. Project 2025 is a proposed presidential transition project that is composed of 4 pillars. 1, a policy guide for the next presidential administration. 2, a LinkedIn-style database of personnel who could serve in the next administration. 3, training for that pool of candidates dubbed the Presidential Administration Academy. And 4, a playbook of actions to be taken within the first 180 days in office. So the question I asked, and I'm still waiting on an answer. Okay, so if this is what's planned the first 180 days in office, what's planned for the other 3.5 years? Are we to believe that they don't have that written down too? Okay, so, all right, next slide, Marcus. Much of the focus on and criticism of Project 2025 involves its first pillar, a nearly 900-page policy playbook. It's actually 922 pages. It's about 30 chapters or so that lays out an overhaul of the federal government. It's called Mandate for Leadership 2025, The Conservative Promise. No, I was just on the Heritage Foundation's website yesterday. They're selling the book for $125, just so y'all know. You can buy it. They're selling the book for $125. Okay? I thought it was a hoax. The book builds on a Mandate for Leadership first published in January 1981, which sought to serve as a roadmap for Ronald Reagan's incoming administration. They've been planning this over 40 years. And see, what I find interesting is this is CBS News. This isn't some conspiracy theory website. This is October. This is actually a year ago. And some of our people still haven't caught up. So this is why we got to take this information. This is why we have to take this information to them. Okay? All right. Okay, next slide. All right, now, still in the same article, the Heritage Foundation also created a mandate for leadership in 2015. Now, hold on. In 2015, ahead of the first term, okay? Trump's first term. 2 years into the presidency, it touted that it had instituted 64% of its policy recommendations, ranging from leaving the Paris Climate Accords, increasing military spending, and increasing offshore drilling and developing federal lands. Well, you've done this before. When you go research it at the Heritage Foundation's website, they got an article from January 2018 where they talk about how they got 64% of their policies put in place in 2017. So I was dealing with this on Roland's show. I was dealing with this on my show. I was putting this on my social media platforms. And people were saying, oh, this is a hoax. This doesn't exist. I'm like, and at some point, you just have to let some people go. They're just not going to get it. Okay? You know, what was it, Erykah Badu said, maybe next lifetime, something like that. They're just not going to get it. Okay? Next slide. All right, now listen right here. This article here. So going back in my archives, I was like, okay, so how can we build this bridge? This article is from April 1st, 2024. And I wish it was an April Fool's joke, but it's not. This is from Axios.com. This is one of the sites I read, news sites I read every day. Name of this article is Allies Plot Anti-Racism Protections for White People. Go to the next slide, Marcus. This is a very interesting article. This is saying what is going to happen if something didn't happen in November 2024. And it's explaining what's going to happen. Here's what it says. It says if somebody returns to the White House, close allies want to dramatically change the government's interpretation of civil rights era laws to focus on anti-white racism rather than discrimination against people of color. Okay? Now, this is in the article from April 2024. Next slide. The Department of Justice for an incoming administration would push to eliminate or upend programs in government and corporate America that are designed to counter racism that has favored whites. So what they're saying is that they're reversing programs that were beneficial, even remotely beneficial for black people. That's what this article is telling us is going to happen. Targets would range from decades-old policies aimed at giving minorities economic opportunities to more recent programs that began in response to the pandemic and the killing of George Floyd. So when you get into this research, you keep seeing some constant themes. One, you keep seeing the backlash to the racial reckoning that took place after the death of George Floyd. Policies put in place, donations given, programs put in place, all of this. One. Two, you see them using the 2023, I think it was June, July 2023 U.S. Supreme Court ruling banning affirmative action in college admissions. Okay? So they use that as a foundation to then say, well, if you can't have affirmative action here, then we're going to wipe out affirmative action everywhere and anything that looks like affirmative action. Okay? Three, you see an attack on diversity, equity, and inclusion all across the board, not just jobs. We're talking about grants for environmental justice grants. We're talking about in the Department of Justice and holding police departments accountable, things like this in the Department of Justice. We're looking at all across the board, okay? All right, now, a central vehicle for the effort has been an organization called America First Legal, okay, who was and America First Legal cited the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in February in a lawsuit against CBS, the broadcasting network, and Paramount Global, okay, for what the group argued was discrimination against a white straight man who was a writer for the show, SEAL Team in 2017. So they're going back. Now, back during 2021 and 2022, during the pandemic, we started seeing a rise in book banning. We started seeing a rise in organizations formed at the local level that were, one, putting pressure on school boards to ban certain books, usually books dealing with African-American history, slavery, things of this nature, okay? Two, they started running school board candidates, gaining power at the local level, all right? And we start really seeing backlash coming from there. Okay, go back to the slide, Marcus. What's taking place and what has been taking place is that you're suppressing the teaching of African American history, but you keep going back using laws from that period of time to attack us today and shape the future. So you use the 1964 Civil Rights Act against African Americans. You use the 1866 Civil Rights Act against African Americans. You use Section 1 of the 14th Amendment of 1868, which was to give citizenship to former slaves. You use that against us. But at the same time, you want to suppress the teaching of the history from that same period of time. Okay, next slide. Okay, now, in 2021, America First Legal successfully sued to block the implementation of a $29 billion pandemic-era program for women and minority-owned restaurants, saying it discriminated against white business owners. Now, so this is a common theme that you'll see. So they'll say, we want a merit-based society, we want a colorblind society, we're going to fulfill Dr. King's dream, therefore we don't want racism against anybody, so we're going to wipe out all these policies that have been beneficial for African Americans. Okay, yeah, go back to that. Okay, now, go back to the previous slide for 1 second here. All right, now, the Heritage Foundation's well-funded Project 2025 envisions a second administration ending what it calls affirmative discrimination. Affirmative discrimination. Okay, next slide. All right, now such groups have gained momentum after the Supreme Court's 2023 rejection of affirmative action in college admissions. The court ruled that programs designed to benefit people of color and address past injustices discriminated against white and Asian Americans. Now, also in 2021, they attacked black farmers when $4 billion in federal funds were going to go to African-American farmers and farmers of color because of historic discrimination. Lawsuits were filed by white farmers saying we're being discriminated against. This is what happened here. Known as Section 1005, the program was created as part of a $1.9 trillion stimulus package that Congress passed in March 2021. It was intended to provide debt relief to socially disadvantaged farmers. Now, this is a buzzword. They're wiping out policies that deal with socially disadvantaged or disadvantaged. And they're saying that they're race-based policies, therefore they are illegal. Okay, but they don't want to admit to the racism that caused the policies to be needed in the first place. So therefore they say we want a colorblind society. That's what you people said you wanted. Okay, that's what we're going to do. We're going to wipe all this stuff out and we're going to have a colorblind society. Okay, socially disadvantaged farmers defined by the government as those who are black, American Indian, Alaska Native, Hispanic, Asian, and Pacific Islander. Okay, next slide. Okay, now this one here. This is from 2024, this article. How many people saw this? This is New York Times. I read New York Times every day. And I got a full-time job, but I still monitor. I follow 35 different news sources on a daily basis. I get alerts all throughout the day, emails all throughout the day from news sources. It was like that before I was on Roland's daily digital show, I used to guest host his nationally syndicated radio show. So I'm on the air and I got 2 phones. I'm getting alerts from different news sources and I'm breaking news stories on the air, things of this nature, right? Okay, federal judge rules minority business agency must serve white people as well. Anybody see this article? Anybody hear about this? And see what I'm saying is that, okay, the signs are there. We have to understand how to decode the symbols. So this article is from March 6, 2024, New York Times. Go to the next slide, Marcus, please. It says in March 2024, a federal judge ruled that the Commerce Department's Minority Business Development Agency was discriminating against white people, and that the program had to be open to everyone. Now, the Minority Business Development Agency is a Commerce Department program created during the Nixon administration to help minority-owned businesses discriminates against white people and must offer its services to people of all races and ethnic groups, a federal judge in Texas ruled. Okay, next slide. The judge, U.S. District Court, sided with 2 of the 3 white business owners who sued the agency that they were told its assistance was limited to members of disadvantaged minority groups. So because of this is one of the reasons why programs, like there was a DEI program for black farmers that just a few months ago got wiped out. It was for socially disadvantaged farmers. Gone. So they're targeting any of these programs, okay? So even though this is not reparations, and if anybody see my presentation to the Detroit Reparations Task Force, March 2nd, 2024? Anybody see that presentation? It's on my YouTube channel. It's gotten thousands of views. Anybody see that? Okay. Even though this isn't reparations, right? You have to understand the concept of repairing the damage, okay, of racism and white supremacy and these policies, right? They're coming and taking all this back. They're trying to take us back to 1890, while at the same time resurrecting Confederate monuments. The presumption that the business owners were not disadvantaged violated the 14th Amendment guarantee of equal protection under the law, wrote the federal judge, who permanently barred the agency from serving only members of minority groups. So here's the 14th Amendment that was originally for African Americans. Now you're using it against us. All this is being weaponized. Okay, next slide. Okay, now, to warn us about Project 2025, the Legal Defense Fund's Thurgood Marshall Institute, they released a newsletter and a report, October 4th, 2024, to warn us of some things. And this dealt with what Project 2025 means for black communities. Anybody read it? Anybody hear about it? Okay. All right. All right. Okay, so here's an excerpt of what it said. Dangerous efforts like Project 2025 only seek to reverse progress that black communities have fought so hard to achieve for generations within the United States. Within the United States, such anti-democratic, democratic with a small d, such anti-democratic, anti-justice actions threaten the very fabric of U.S. democracy with a small d as a whole, said Carla McCanders, director of the Thurgood Marshall Institute. Quote, next slide, Marcus. Quote, we find ourselves at a critical juncture that we have visited many times before in this country's history. A choice to propel forward in pursuit of a stronger nation that lives up to our constitutional ideas, or fall backwards into antiquated, divisive ways that act to reverse civil rights and concentrate power in the hands of a privileged few. We must categorically disavow any proposal or action such as Project 2025 that threatens to harm communities and work collaboratively to build an equitable, inclusive future, end quote. Okay, next slide. That's just an excerpt from it. So then they lay out the potential harms. The new report outlines the ways in which black communities will be adversely impacted by Project 2025, including weakening anti-discrimination laws and cutting essential workers' protections. Okay, for instance, eliminate key safeguards that protect black workers and bar federal agencies from collecting racial demographic data, making it harder to enforce anti-discrimination laws. Because what's taking place right now, and what Nicole Hannah-Jones outlined in her essay for the New York Times, and I printed it out, it's 14 pages, it's a deep analysis. They're removing, at the federal level, they're removing the enforcement mechanisms in various civil rights departments across the federal government. They're removing that, so now you can't enforce it. They're removing the teeth from it, okay? And at the same time, one of the things that's being done is the analysis, the studies, to study the discrepancies, to study the discrimination, things like that, that's being shut down. So if you don't have the evidence, now you can't craft the policy, because now you don't know how pervasive the harm is. Okay. Now, 2, limiting access to quality education for black students. Exacerbate the education and wealth gap for black students and workers by dismantling the Department of Education. Now, this came out October 4th, 2024. They were warning us. I talked about this on the African History Network show. They were warning us of what's coming. Chapter 11 of Project 2025 deals with dismantling the U.S. Department of Education. They put it in the book. And so the Department of Education, for those that don't know, was created in 1979 by Congress, signed into law by the president at the time, okay? And the reason why, conservatives want to destroy the Department of Education is because one of the things that it does is enforce civil rights of students. And this goes back to Brown versus Board of Education and the anti-desegregation movement. And in 1956, there was a movement called Massive Resistance coming out of Virginia. Massive Resistance, which was a resistance by white segregationists to resist desegregation. Okay? Then you had the IRS threatening to take the nonprofit status away from a lot of Christian schools that refused to desegregate. Okay, like in 1976. Then, 1979, the Department of Education is created. So you've had people that want to dismantle it since it started. Now, contrary to popular belief, the Department of Education does not set curriculum. That's set at the state and local level. Contrary to popular belief, 92% of funding comes from the state and local level for education. Only 8% from the Department of Education. So when I hear people say, "Well, we want to send funding back to the states," well, it's already coming from the states. 92%. They're running game on people. I'm from Detroit. I know hustlers when I see them. Okay, they're running game on people. All right, next slide. Okay, undermining black political power. Undermining black political power by overhauling the U.S. Census Bureau and criminalizing election-related offenses. Project 2025 will weaken the political influence of black communities by undercounting them and suppressing the black vote through threats and intimidation, destabilizing the key foundations of our multiracial democracy. Like, for instance, I'm not saying somebody would do this, but for instance, like having the National Guard out in communities on election day. I'm not saying somebody would do this. That's one of the ways to suppress the vote. Or gerrymandering districts before you take the next census. All this is going back to 1890 and 1895, South Carolina, Louisiana, 1898. So as a historian, I see these things taking place. And I'm like, hold on, this is what they did. This is what I was warning people about. Okay, now, promoting a punitive criminal legal policy, promoting punitive criminal legal policies. Project 2025 will endanger black communities by likely increasing the use of the U.S. racially discriminatory death penalty and rolling back efforts to address police misconduct for constitutional and civil rights violations. Like, I don't know, ending lawsuits against the Minneapolis Police Department and against the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department after the death of Breonna Taylor. Something like that the Department of Justice would do. I'm not saying they would do it, they just did it. I'm not saying they would do it, but this is what they're warning us about. Okay? Next slide. Then jeopardizing black families' access to affordable housing. Project 2025 would transfer control of critical housing programs to expand access to affordable housing, like Section 8 to states, including those with a history of racial discrimination threatening the housing stability of millions of black low-income families. Okay, there are a couple more, but I think you get the picture. Okay, so read that. Okay, this is LDF's Thurgood Marshall Institute releases new report, What Project 2025 Means for Black Communities. Okay, this is from October 4th, 2024. Okay, next slide, Marcus. And then they're talking about threatening. Okay, this is, okay, I'll go over this quickly. Threatening reproductive rights and the health of black people. Okay, and they talk about black pregnant women who already face disproportionately high maternal mortality rates would be hit the hardest by Project 2025's restrictions on reproductive health care, which includes proposals to ban federal access to abortion care and criminalize health care providers. Given that 42% of women seeking abortion care are black, This proposal will have devastating consequences for their health and autonomy and the health and autonomy of their families. Okay, so check that out. All right, next slide. Okay, and exacerbating health disparities caused by environmental racism. This deals with shutting down the Office of Environmental Justice, okay, that enforced civil rights laws and things like this, and disparities when it came to African Americans being disproportionately harmed by pollution, things like this. I'm not saying somebody would shut it down, but it just got shut down. Next. Okay, now, this was a good article here from CNN. What is DEI and why is it dividing America? Now, this is from January 23rd, 2025. Okay, what is DEI and why is it dividing America? So just a quick synopsis of this. Go to the next slide, please. This piece talks about, they interviewed 7 DEI experts, okay, and industry leaders. Most had a shared vision for what constitutes the concept of DEI. Now, when we talk about diversity, they said diversity means embracing the differences everyone brings to the table, whether those are someone's race, age, ethnicity, religion, gender, sexual orientation, physical ability, or other aspects of social identity. Because being disabled is part of DEI, diversity. Veterans, people who served in the military, that's part of DEI, diversity. For some reason, people just think that DEI means black. No, it doesn't. Okay, it's a number of different things. 2, equity. What is equity? Equity is treating everyone fairly and providing equal opportunities. Okay, next slide. And then 3, inclusion. What does inclusion mean? Inclusion is respecting everyone's voice and creating a culture in which people from all backgrounds feel encouraged to express their ideas and perspectives. Okay, now DEI was created because marginalized communities have not always had equal opportunities for jobs or felt a sense of belonging in majority white corporate settings. I've been there, said Daniel Apong, founder of the Courage Collective, a consultancy that advises companies on DEI. Next slide. He said, that is the genesis of why some of these programs exist, he said. It was an attempt to try to create workplaces where more or all people can thrive. Now, I'll be the first to admit, DEI didn't go as far as it should have gone, didn't go as far as it needed to go. Some corporations weren't as committed as others. But that doesn't mean you should get rid of it. That doesn't mean you should criminalize it. That doesn't mean you should investigate organizations and schools that have diversity, equity, and inclusion programs because you think they discriminate against white people. Next. Now, the backlash from the same article, the backlash against DEI may feel like a pendulum swing from 2020 when the nation faced a racial reckoning after a black father, George Floyd, was killed in Minneapolis, Minnesota by a white police officer. But the DEI practice has been around for decades. The origins of DEI programs date back to the origins of DEI programs date back to the Civil Rights Movement, which played a pivotal role in accelerating efforts to create more diverse and inclusive workplaces, said Dominique Hollins, founder of the DEI consulting firm We360. Next slide. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 outlawed employment discrimination based on race, religion, sex, color, and national origin. It also banned segregation in public places like public schools and libraries. And Title VII of the Civil Rights Act established the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, the EEOC, which works to eliminate employment discrimination. That's under attack right now. Next slide, Marcus. In the 1960s and 1970s, employees began filing discrimination lawsuits with the EEOC, Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, and many companies started incorporating diversity into their business strategies by providing diversity training, according to a 2008 report published in the Academy of Management, Learning, and Education. These diversity training efforts emerged around the time affirmative action began by executive order from President John F. Kennedy at first. Although the concepts may seem similar, affirmative action is different from DEI, as affirmative action required federal contractors by executive order to treat applicants and employees equally based on race, color, religion, and sex. Okay, and you're gonna have Executive Order 11246 signed by President Lyndon Johnson in 1965. That's gone now too, just so y'all know if you haven't been paying attention. George Floyd's murder renewed the push for DEI leadership roles and initiatives at major corporations. Between 2019 and 2022, Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer roles grew by 168.9%, a LinkedIn analysis found. Now, though, some of those efforts have been rolled back and DEI roles abandoned because leaders did not feel fully supported. But a lot of people in those roles, some African American, did not feel fully supported from the organization, from their higher ups. And this is something that Hollins said also. Companies, quote, now pay attention to this, companies, quote, were giving the appearance of commitment without actually doing the right work for that commitment to be sustainable, end quote. And now, back when this was taking place, because I remember when all this was going down, and we talked about it on the African History Network show, we talked about it on Roland Martin Unfiltered, I'm on other shows. Well, I'm looking and I'm like, okay, this ain't gonna last long. We gotta wait, we gotta watch the backlash. Okay, now these programs and this organization gonna donate tens of millions of dollars to Black Lives Matter and do this and that. And it got so confusing, they were donating to the wrong organizations. Then they had to take the money back and go give it to this organization, right? But I said, even though this is not 100% everything we want, we're gonna have to protect it because our new forces were gonna come take it back. Okay, next slide. Now, what does DEI look like at work? DEI in the workplace can be a mix of employee training, resource networks, and recruiting practices, said Kelly Baker, Executive Vice President and Chief Human Resources Officer at Thrivent, an organization that provides financial advice. Okay, so I encourage you, read this full article because this goes in depth. I'm just skimming the surface of it. What is DEI and why is it dividing America? It's from CNN. Okay, next slide. And then at the end, because I'm gonna wrap up in about 25 minutes or so, and then we're gonna open it up to questions. Okay, so write down your questions. Now, this is a good article from January 14th, 2024, which deals with using the Civil Rights Act of 1866, the year after slavery ended, using it against black people. DEI opponents are using an 1866 civil rights law to challenge equity policies in the workplace. Anybody read Associated Press? Article, go to apnews.com, okay, Associated Press. Because about 30 to 40% of articles from other news sources, NBC News, ABC, CBS, CNN, some other news sources, they get their articles from the Associated Press, okay? So when you see AP, that's Associated Press. When you see AP, like in the byline, the source of the article, that's the Associated Press. Opponents of workplace diversity programs are increasingly banking on a section of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 to challenge equity policies as well as funding to minority-owned businesses. So they're going after the money. It's not just jobs. They're going after programs that gave grants to black-owned businesses. They went after the Fearless Fund, the black women that created the fund for women business owners of color. They went after that. The same person who brought the lawsuit to strike down affirmative action in college admissions, then went after the Fearless Fund. They used the 14th Amendment to strike down affirmative action in college admissions, and then they used the 1866 Civil Rights Act to attack the Fearless Fund. Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act of 1866 was originally meant to protect formerly enslaved people, or black people specifically, from economic exclusion. But now, the Alliance for Equal Rights, a group run by Edward Bloom, the conservative activist who challenged affirmative action in higher education and won, that's the Supreme Court case 2023, is citing the Section 1981 to go after a venture capital fund called the Fearless Fund, which invests in businesses owned by women of color. A federal appeals court temporarily blocked. Okay, so that went, and what the Fearless Fund had to do is they're coming out with a new fund, but the way that they were doing one of their funds, it was a $20,000 grant. They really had to stop doing it that way because of this lawsuit. But what they're trying to do is across the board, any policies that are remotely beneficial for African Americans, especially dealing with grants for businesses, things like this, they're going through and systematically wiping all of that out. Next slide. Conservative activists have brought lawsuits urging the 1981 section against corporations, against other companies and institutions, including insurance company Progressive and pharmaceutical giant Pfizer. The cases are being monitored carefully as the battle over racial considerations shift to the workplace following the U.S. Supreme Court's June 2023 ruling ending affirmative action in college admissions. Okay, next slide. While the 1981 section had been used well before the latest affirmative action ruling to prove reverse discrimination, Alfonso David, the Fearless Fund's legal counsel, who serves as president and CEO of the Global Black Economic Forum, said that there's a coordinated use of Section 1981 now that we did not see before. Okay, next slide. All right, so what is Section 1981 of the Civil Rights Act of 1866? The 1866 Civil Rights Act is a federal law prohibiting discrimination on the basis of race, color, and ethnicity when making and enforcing contracts. Okay, this deals with contracts. This deals with business. This deals with businesses. And as Roland talks about on his show periodically, he said they're trying to defund Black America. All these policies they're going back and wiping out. Section 1981 specifically grants all individuals within the U.S. jurisdiction the same rights and benefits as enjoyed by white citizens regarding contractual relationships. Okay? All right, so read the rest of that. All right, next slide. Okay, now this piece right here, this was Nicole Hannah-Jones' fantastic essay for the New York Times, came out June 27, 2025. Anybody hear about it? How Trump upended 60 years of civil rights in 2 months. Anybody hear about it? Okay? And I've read through a lot of it. All right? Here's an excerpt of it. Let's go to the next slide, Marcus. Here's an excerpt of it. In 2024, a little-known office in the U.S. Department of Labor helped black workers at a Texas medical center recover $900,000 in back wages, and black workers at a Caterpillar plant, manufacturing plant in Illinois, recover $800,000 in back wages each time over allegations that those applicants lost out on jobs because of their race. Called the Office of Federal Contract Compliance, the FCCP, or the OFCCP, the Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs. This division investigates and fights employment discrimination for 1/5 of the U.S. labor force. It was created in 1965, okay, when President Johnson signed an executive order strengthening the provision of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 that banned racial discrimination by employers. The OFCCP, Office of Federal Contract Compliance Programs, specifically enforced the law among businesses and institutions that contracted with the government or received federal funds. The landmark law also bans segregation and discrimination in all public places, including schools, libraries, restaurants, and businesses. Okay, go back to the, I got a slide after that, Marcus. For more than 60 years, the executive order helped many thousands of workers who had endured discrimination. Yet, despite the law, research shows that Black Americans continue to face pervasive employment discrimination at a rate that has not declined since the late 1980s. Okay, next slide. On January 20th, 2025, an executive order was signed ending DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, ending radical and wasteful government DEI programs and preferencing. Now, previous administrations had forced illegal, the claim is previous administrations forced illegal and immoral discrimination programs going by the name diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, into virtually all aspects of the federal government. And also Executive Order 13985, signed into law January 20, 2021, the executive order advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities through the federal government, that was gone at the beginning of this year. What that did was that put policies in place, 300 policies in 90 federal organizations to bring about racial equity. Okay, next slide. And also, we saw Executive Order 11246 rescinded earlier this year. In March 2025, Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, now the EPA goes back to the Nixon administration, Environmental Protection Agency, okay, shuttered the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. This is what I was just telling you about. This department was shut down permanently. Shuttered the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights and announced it was eliminating all 10 of its regional divisions, okay? Now, this goes back to 1992, created because of the disproportionate exposure to deadly pollutants, toxic waste, and pesticides faced by Black people. Okay, so read the rest of that. Check that out. Okay, next slide, Marcus. In March 2025, a move was made to dismiss a landmark environmental justice lawsuit in Louisiana against a chemical plant located in a poor, predominantly Black community. This is called Cancer Alley. Anybody hear about Cancer Alley in Louisiana? And a lawsuit filed against this chemical plant that is alleged is polluting the area and causing cancer among African Americans. And Cancer Alley, that area is about an 80-mile, if I remember correctly, it's about an 80-mile stretch. And it's 80% Black, okay? That area is about 80% Black. But that lawsuit was dropped, okay? And you have this department that's shuttered. Okay, next slide. And, okay, this deals with disparate impact liability also. This is from the same article as well. Okay, next slide. I'm going to speed through some of this. This deals with diluting Black power, Black political power. Diluting Black political power, as the Thurgood Marshall Legal Defense Fund warned us what was going to happen. When state legislators create new congressional maps that eliminate majority Black districts, for instance, they are not going to declare that they are doing so to dilute Black political power. But under disparate impact, Black residents don't have to prove that legislators intended to discriminate. They can prove discrimination if the accused cannot show that there was a legitimate reason. So disparate impact is something that you're going to hear about, and I've been hearing about as well. This gets into that. Okay, next slide. And just for the sake of time, I'm going to zip through this. So go ahead, next slide. Redirecting of the Department of Justice away from fighting anti-black discrimination. Now, I was looking at an article today from theguardian.com from June and July this year that talked about 20 investigations, I think it was, into police departments have been dropped. Okay? This deals with the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and how in previous administrations, patterns and practice investigations were launched in certain departments of justice. Minneapolis Department of Justice. It happened here in Detroit, I think 2 times. We were in Southfield, but Detroit a couple of times. Chicago, things like this. And this is designed especially when you have evidence of racial discrimination, abuses against African Americans. The Department of Justice can launch this investigation and then enter into a consent decree with the police, with that police department, with oversight from a federal judge to improve the conditions, improve behavior, things of this nature. Okay, this deals with ending that practice. Okay, next slide. That's what's taking place right now. Now this is another article. This is from the Associated Press. This is Justice Department says ending Louisiana petrochemical case helps dismantle radical DEI programs. Now, one of the things that I find interesting is that people can find DEI in almost anything. Okay, they revoke billions of dollars to build a bridge, and they say it's possibly unconstitutional DEI programs and things of this nature. But this piece right here, this is from, I think this was 2024, and this deals with the Cancer, March 7, 2025. This deals with Cancer Alley. The Justice Department on Friday celebrated its decision to drop a federal lawsuit against a Louisiana petrochemical plant accused of worsening cancer risks for residents in a majority black community, saying the dismissal showed that officials are, okay, whatever. Okay, go ahead to the next slide. But so they'll see DEI in anything. Go to the next slide, Marcus. I think I got a slide on this. This deals with what I was just talking about. The civil rights investigations into police departments, okay? This was a really good article from NBCnews.com. The Justice Department is dismantling lawsuits against a number of local police departments and ending investigations into patterns and practices of unconstitutional behavior. The pullback from police oversight comes amid major changes at the Department of Justice Civil Rights Division. Officials said lawsuits during the previous administration against two city police departments, Louisville, Kentucky, and Minneapolis, would be dismissed. And this is what they did. Louisville, Kentucky, because of the killing of Breonna Taylor, and Minneapolis, Minnesota, because of the killing of George Floyd. Now, what's interesting is that, go to the next slide, because anybody know when the Department of Justice was created? Okay, we're going to get to that. You're not going to believe this. The lawsuit followed Justice Department investigations into those two police departments, which describe patterns of use of excessive force, discrimination against black people, and free speech violations in both jurisdictions. Those investigations were separate from criminal trials of police officers from those departments who were charged over the high-profile killings of George Floyd in Minneapolis and Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Kentucky. So when you have white police officers convicted of killing African Americans unjustly, many of us are happy, but everybody ain't happy. Like I said in the beginning, when you deal with Project 2025, it's dealing with a backlash to the racial reckoning that took place in this country after the killing of George Floyd, that racial reckoning echoed around the world. And a lot of people, so here's what, I talked about this on Roland Martin Unfiltered. And I said that back in 2022, there were articles saying there was a nationwide shortage of police officers. Because what happened was, because of the tide that was turning, because of the racial justice movement, things like this, some officers who didn't like that movement left the profession. They retired, they went to go work for Amazon or something, you know, they left, right? So that left vacancies. So a lot of departments had to lower their standards. A lot of departments were saying, look, we're down 300, 400, 500, 600, 800 officers. We got to hire people. I said, this is an opportunity for black people who said, we want officers who respect people, treat them like human beings, will only use lethal force as a last result, people who, officers who see the African-American community as a community to be protected and not policed, because that's understanding the difference between the guardian mentality and the warrior mentality. The warrior mentality is us against them. The guardian mentality respects the people and sees them as people to be protected, okay? I said this is the time for people who say they want that to apply to these police departments and get these jobs, so for us to become the type of officers we claim we want to see. Instead of trying to reform people who are unreformable. A lot of people miss that, okay? And that opportunity is slipping away. Okay, next slide. This right here, the U.S. Department of Justice was created in 1870 by an act of Congress during Reconstruction. The primary purpose of the U.S. Department of Justice was to enforce the new rights given to African Americans, especially voting rights. That's why it was created. This is an article from SmithsonianMag.com, Smithsonian Institute. Read this article. I don't have time to get deep into it. Read this article. Created 150 years ago, the Justice Department's first mission was to protect black rights. This article is from July 1st, 2020. See, we don't understand how to protect gains. This is why you have to understand history, economics, law, and politics. And at the same time, you have forces suppressing the teaching of our history so we can't understand the past. When you can control people's understanding of the past, suppress their ability to vote in the present, you can predict and shape the laws of the future. This is what's happening. But long story short, the president at the time declared martial law in 9 counties in South Carolina to crack down on Ku Klux Klan activity because the Klan was attacking African Americans and African American elected officials and things of this nature. Read this article. This is a good read. This is a deep article. Okay, next slide, Marcus. This deals with the infrastructure bill, New Jersey and New York infrastructure bill. This is from a few days ago. This is USA Today. Okay, they're revoking $18 billion infrastructure bill, okay, because they claim DEI. So when I heard it on the radio and I heard it on MSNBC, because I listen to, so the TuneIn app, right? The TuneIn app, you can stream MSNBC for free, but I got cable. I pay that high cable bill too, Xfinity. All right, I pay. That's like a car note, but. I heard them talking about holding up the infrastructure, revoking the funds because DEI. So I went and read it. In a post on X, Russell Vought, the director of the Federal Office of Management and Budget, said the hold is meant to ensure funding is not flowing based on unconstitutional DEI principles, referring to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So Russell Vought is known as the architect of Project 2025. Okay, next slide. Oh, so this is a good one here, because I heard people talking about they're taking black jobs, right? This is from like July this year. Associated Press, 1.2 million immigrants are gone from the U.S. labor force but the unemployment rate for black people went up. It didn't go down. I thought they were taking black jobs. Go to the next slide. Okay, next slide. More than 1.2 million immigrants disappeared from the labor force from January through the end of July 2025, according to preliminary Census Bureau data analyzed by the Pew Research Center. That includes people who are in the country illegally as well as legal residents. Immigrants make up almost 20% of the U.S. workforce, and that data shows 45% of workers in farming, fishing, and forestry are immigrants. So now you got white farmers saying, we can't find people to do the work and pick the vegetables and things like this. I wonder what happened. And the price of produce and things like this keeps going up. And they say, well, we can't find people to do the job. Well, but the people who said they were taking our jobs don't want to get out there and pick lettuce and pick tomatoes. It's like people don't even understand how the economy works. Did you know during the Great Depression, the U.S. deported about 1.8 million Mexicans back to Mexico, and they said they were taking white people's jobs? And they found out after the fact 60% of them were born here legally? The history.com, official website of the History Channel, they have a deep, in-depth article on that. And the president at the time had a campaign called, it's something like Real Jobs for Real Americans. And they said, the president at the time said, these Mexicans are taking white people's jobs. Next slide. The loss in immigrant workers comes as the nation is seeing the first decline in the overall immigrant population after the number of people in the U.S. illegally reached an all-time high of 14 million in 2023. That includes those on temporary protective status, like 521,000 Haitians, 350,000 Venezuelans. Next slide. We told they were taking black jobs, but 300,000 black women lost their job since February this year. This is a good article from Essence.com. More than 300,000 black women have lost their jobs this year. The NAACP says it's no accident. Next slide. Over 300,000 black women have put, now the same people who said they're taking black jobs are not explaining this. They're not even admitting that it's taking place. They don't even want to count the numbers anymore. Over 300,000 black women have been pushed out of the workforce in recent months, and the numbers keep getting worse. Not to mention, it's a figure that's raising alarms among advocates and economists alike. In April of 2025 alone, more than 106,000 black women lost their jobs. The unemployment rate for black women jumped from 5.1% to 6.1% in a single month, while the national rate stayed at 4.2%. By now, it's climbed to 7.5%. And we know the unemployment rate overall for black people in August 2025 went to 7.5%. And the gap between black women and everyone else is widening faster than it has since 2020. Next slide. I'm going to wrap up in a couple minutes here. Karen Boykin Towns, vice chair of the NAACP National Board of Directors, says what's happening is not just bad luck or market forces. Quote, we're witnessing a convergence of systemic inequities made worse by policy decisions that have rolled back hard-won progress, she says. She points to companies quietly abandoning diversity, equity, and inclusion commitments, massive federal workforce cuts, and small businesses struggling under tariffs and tight credit. 2.3, now it's about 2.2 million federal employees. 19% of them are black, because we over-index in federal jobs. And you look at the 630,000 employees of the U.S. Postal Service, 29% of them are black, and we've been working for the U.S. Postal Service going back to the 1840s, 1850s. So I don't know if people are familiar with Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson, going back to 1994, 1995, said, when you hear people talking about they want a smaller government, they want a downsized government, he said they're talking about disemploying black people. They're talking about firing black people from these government jobs. Next slide. Black women are concentrated in public service. These are sectors where African-American women are concentrated in the workforce. Public service, nonprofits, and care work. Sectors that have been hit hardest. Quote, when you dismantle departments like the Department of Education, okay, because it was a high percentage of African-American women who worked for the Department of Education, as well as Housing and Urban Development, HUD, which have long employed large numbers of black women, and weaken nonprofit organizations that depend on government grants. You're not just cutting jobs, you're cutting stability, security, and pathways to advancement, she said. What we're seeing is not just personal choice, but systemic disinvestment. Okay, next slide. And then you have the attack on black cities with black mayors like Chicago, Memphis, Washington, things of this nature. Okay, we see that taking place. And one of the things that's happened is that the grants that came from like 2022 that were going to these cities like Detroit and Chicago and Washington, D.C., things like this, contributing to lower crime rates, in some cases record low crime rates over 30 years, those grants are being taken back. They're saying they're DEI, they're non-effective. You had 800, and you had the community violence intervention grants. And this has been helping Detroit. Community violence intervention grants. $158 million in those grants have been wiped out. They were helping cities like Chicago, Washington, D.C. The elimination of the CVI programs is part of a broader rollback at the Justice Department's grant issuing Office of Justice Programs, which terminated 365 grants valued at $811 million in April 2025, impacting a range of public safety and victim services programs. All right, next slide. The grants helped fund several programs that work to prevent gun violence. These included training outreach teams to de-escalate conflict, social workers to connect people with key services, and programs for hospitalized gun violence victims, Reuters reported. Okay, next slide. Read this article here, because I've been talking about it throughout the presentation. This is from the Washington Post. This is from 2021. The Mississippi plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. Quote, we came here to exclude the Negro, end quote. Next slide. This is from the Washington Post. On a hot August day in 1890, delegates gathered at Mississippi's Capitol building in Jackson, Mississippi to begin work on a new state constitution. The overriding topic was the suffrage question, voting question. The convention's president, Solomon Saladin Calhoun, was a white county judge. He put the voting issue bluntly. He said, quote, let's tell the truth. If it bursts, the bottom of the universe. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. Next slide. And this is exactly what they did. They put in place a felony disenfranchisement law in 1890 in Mississippi. So if you were convicted of a felony, you lost your right to vote for the rest of your life. When you read this article, they expanded the number of crimes which would be classified as a felony. They were targeting African-American men who are voting. That felony disenfranchisement law is still in effect in Mississippi to this day. Okay, can't forget this one. Confederate statues are back. Let's bring them all back. Let's bring back Nathan Bedford Forrest. Let's bring back General Lee. He's on the Dukes of Hazzard. That's who the car that General Lee is named after, General Robert E. Lee. How many people didn't know that? It's you on the top of the Dukes of Hazzard car, the charge. I watched it when I was a kid. Bo and Luke Duke and Daisy Duke with the Daisy Duke shorts on. You even had a video called "Look at Them Girls with the Daisy." Oh, we ain't supposed to talk about that in church. But what I'm showing you is the programming. I'm showing you the programming. Black children are watching a show that is Well, it's a euphemism for the Confederacy. General Robert E. Lee was a racist slave owner who took up arms against the Union to maintain slavery. On the top of the General Lee car is the flag. It's not the Confederate flag. It's the Confederate battle flag of Northern Virginia under General Robert E. Lee's army. People think that's the Confederate flag. No, there were 3 flags that flew over the Confederate States of America from 1861 to 1865. That flag was never one of them. Okay, there's a good article from CNN that deals with the history of the Confederate flags, and they break down the 3 flags. That was not one. That was General Robert E. Lee's car, his flag. Okay, next slide. This deals with Albert Pike, the Confederate monument of Albert Pike that was toppled during the George Floyd protests in 2020. It's been restored and resurrected. So you have to ask the question, well, what are people, hold on, these were traitors to the Union. They committed treason. They worked to fight for slavery. And now you want to resurrect their monuments? Next slide. And this is in Washington, D.C. This was just resurrected like this week. Okay? Okay, next slide. An attack on African American history in the Smithsonian Museum. So we've been talking about that. You've heard a lot about that as well. Next slide here. Okay, so what can we do? So if you watch me on Roland's show, if you watch the African History Network show, I talk about political self-defense, and I talk about how we have to understand history, economics, law, and politics. History, economics, law, and politics. So what is politics? Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Politics impacts every aspect of our lives, from the water we drink to the food we eat to the air we breathe. Next slide. I'm going to run through this. You can take a picture of it. Number one, we have to analyze whose policies are most beneficial for African Americans. We have to do a systems analysis. No politician is perfect because the people that they're serving are perfect. Okay, whose policies are most beneficial? Whose policies would do the least amount of harm? Who will create an environment for us to push our policies the furthest and get the most accomplished? Because the election is the end of one process and the beginning of another. All groups are pushing after the election to get their policies put in place, to get their initiatives put in place. It's an ongoing cycle. Number 4, who will protect the gains that have been made? You have to be able to assess the gains to be able to know what needs to be protected. Oftentimes, many of us just took long-standing civil rights laws as that fight was fought and won, and we don't have to do anything else. Not true. Okay. Number 5, remove obstructionists. Okay. We have to fire them, understanding how to block and stop what people are trying to do to you. It's not only, a few years ago I heard people say, I'm not going to vote for anybody that doesn't have a black agenda. First of all, a black agenda is not what politicians give you. A black agenda is what we give politicians. You have to understand the difference, but you have to understand history, economics, law, and politics to be able to put together an agenda. So you have to remove obstructionists, fire them. I would say, like when I'm on Steve Hood, when I used to be on Steve Hood's show, Election day is your day to fire the people you keep calling in the radio shows complaining about. Next, okay, that was 5. Okay, 6, remove obstructionists, fire them. 7, vote for, okay, so I get in trouble sometimes with this, and it's okay. I tell people, stop telling African Americans to exercise your right to vote. Okay, you don't vote for exercise, you vote for power. If you want to exercise, go to the gym and work out. You got to understand the difference. Okay, you vote for policies that are beneficial to you, your family, your communities, etc. Number 8, economic withdrawal strategies. You see, Dr. King, April 3rd, I'm about to start preaching. April 3rd, 1968, I've been to the mountaintop. Dr. King said we have to always anchor our external direct action with the power of economic withdrawal. A lot of us forgot about that. Now, you have people like Pastor Jamal Bryant, things like this, the boycotts against Target, which are good. That needs to be expanded. A lot of people are investing in privatized prisons and don't know it. It's through their 401k plans and pension fund plans. I'm not against 401k plans and pension fund plans, but we can research, get with your benefits manager, find out where your money's invested. You can move it from one sector to another. June 2017, employees in the city of New York government, they divested $48 million from 3 privatized prisons. They found out they were invested in privatized prisons through their 401k plans. It can be done. Because oftentimes we are financing our own dehumanization. Next, number 9. Building power locally in addition to nationally. So yes, national elections matter, but also local elections matter as well. So we have to understand all of the offices at the local level, how they impact us, from the school board to city council to the zoning board to the city clerk's office. The city clerk counts the votes. Number 10, use politics as a tool to accomplish what we want, not look for a savior. A lot of times we're looking for a charismatic leader, things like this. No, we have to use politics and use them as a tool to accomplish what we want. 3, stay informed. Watch Roland Martin Unfiltered. Watch the African History Network show, thegrio.com, news1.com, African American news sources. And we have to study our history as well. African history and culture gives us our foundation. It gives us our values, our interests, and our principles. Our values, our interests, and our principles. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you have been taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. The reason why many of our people don't fight back is because many of our people don't think they're worth fighting for. Okay, next slide. And I'm going to wrap it up with this here. My next online class starts Sunday, November 9th, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is Ancient African Empires, the Moors, and the Transatlantic Slave Trade, 5000 BC to 1800. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can register for it there. You get 5 of my lectures in digital download format also. It's a 10-week online course, 200 slides, 15 books we reference. You can watch it live or watch the archived classes as well. There's 200 articles. We got about 80 to 100 articles that we reference. I've been teaching this class on and off since 2017, so it's revamped. It will blow you away, and it's PG-13, so you can use it with your children as well. Visit my website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Right now, it's correct wrong behavior is not over till we win. Wakanda forever. Thanks for your attention.
Also, you can support the African History Network through PayPal and Cash App. We have the information right on the homepage of my website. If you scroll down, $ the AHN show through Cash App, and through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. This is our Cash App. Tag $ the AHN show, SHOW. When you go to it, it'll say Michael and show my picture there. Okay, these are some fake African History Network Cash App accounts have been stealing money from us. And I put our tag right here. Here's our link to our Cash App, QR code. Okay, so you can support us there if you want to donate support us $5, $10, $15, $25, $50, $100, whatever it is. It definitely helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, pay some of the bills, and broadcast the Sunday night show also. And here's our link for PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show. Okay. All right. So look, we have to get out of here.